Today we'll be speaking about financing the future and money for sustainable development. And I guess this is one of the most important panel at KIEF International Economic Forum, because it doesn't make sense how much money we have, how successful our businesses are, and what are the policies we're implementing if we will fail to tackle the global changes, and if the planet will fail to keep our population. It will not make any sense. So the modern world tackles unprecedented changes, economic, social, environmental, and technological, and of course, biological, as you know. And extensive financial support is needed to tackle all those changes. And experts estimate that we will need, for the next decades, $5 trillion annually to tackle those issues. And inaction, if we do nothing, will cost us much, much more. In addition to the changing of paradigm, mental models, and many policies, the implementation of those changes will require resources. And the question is where we'll get those resources and how we will use those resources. Because investment, loan, grants, impact financing, and even money emission is in our arsenal. And we are going to discuss all the options which is currently available for the world, for developing economies and for developed economies. And for that reason, let me introduce our honorable speakers. And please give your warm welcome to Mr. Jean-Jacques Soulacroup from European Investment Bank, Deputy Head and Corporate Finance Division, and he and urban planner, as we know, for French Ministry of Public Works. Thank you for coming. I also introduce Stefan Brunnhuber, the member of the board of Trustee of World Academy of Arts and Science, full international member of Club of Rome, and he is also the author of the book, Financing Our Future. If you haven't read it, please, that's the book to read. We are also welcome to the panel Vera Economou. She is ECG Group Competence Center Lead Coordinator for Sustainable Development, and she is also working for Raiffeisen Bank, as far as I know. And Vera is responsible to managing green and social loan portfolios that supports Raiffeisen Bank. In this modern world, limited by some consequences of pandemic, we have two speakers joining us remotely. Please welcome Olena Boytsun, Investment Director for Central and Eastern Europe for Luminate Fund. She is with us, and you will be surprised to know that Olena holds the title of Woman International Master in Chess. And the last but not least, Matteo Patrone, EBRD Managing Director, and he is responsible for the bank's operation and policy engagement initiatives in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Moldova, and of course Ukraine, and they give, I guess, $2 billion annually to this region, so they know very well what's happening and where to put money on. I would encourage you to send questions through Telegram. Probably we'll have a couple of questions at the end, but there is a Telegram bot which you can use to send questions, and we are welcome open discussion. We'll try not to make it as a speeches on specific topics, but rather open discussion. So I would encourage speakers to ask questions to each other, be provocative, keep the rule, protect yourself all the time. And I'll just give you a couple of facts which you might know, but they're just shocking. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, said that we don't have time and we have to act now. 25% of cities now have troubles with water, and the situation will get worse and worse. It is predicted that by 2050, 5 billion of people will have problems accessing the drinkable water. The number and scale of natural disasters has increased by 25% for the last decade, only comparing to the 80s or 90s. And the fossil fuel, which we now use for energy production for 84%, provides 75% of carbon footprint. And it's been admitted, you may say it's not, but let's challenge that we will not be able to have this 1.5 Celsius temperature increase by end of century. Most likely, we'll have it by 2.7, 2.6 Celsius by the end of the century, which is absolutely not enough and not sustainable for the humanity development. So let me start the session with a quick question just to warm up. And the first one will be for Stefan. Why are we in this situation? I know that you are a professor and you can answer each question by like giving a lecture, but trying to be short, why humanity is in this situation? What is the major reason we stuck in this issue, in this trouble?
No? Here we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just for the protocol, do you want me to show my slides right now, or should we just discuss in an interactive way? I want to make sure that everybody's happy here in the room.
You know, everyone is happy because we have George Carlin before, but we have this movie which we will show in specific.
Well, short answer, you know, if you're involved in the development sustainability debate, we've been discussing changes in population growth. We've been discussing demographic parameters. We've been discussing lifestyle changes, like buying a veggie burger or riding a bike. We've been discussing changes in governance and technology, but we've been missing since 50 years. Since the Club of Rome report been published in 1972, actually, to discuss the dynamic and the impact of the monetary system and the financial system on whether we're able to go towards a sustainable green path or not. That's a short answer to a complex question.
Thank you so much. Let me come back to bankers then, because you mentioned the financial system. Senor Matteo, do you agree that financial system is guilty for, or better say, the modern capitalism system is guilty for the way we developed as a humanity for the last 100 of years, and the financial system is guilty for the issues which we have now?
I think we are all guilty. Definitely the financial system. Can you hear me?
Badly. We need to increase level of sound, or you can speak louder.
Well, I can shout here, but I'm afraid.
Now it's great.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, I was saying that I think we are all guilty. We all contributed to the problem. But I'm more interested about what we can do to contribute to the mitigation of the problem now, and what we can contribute to the partial resolution of the problem. I think one of the things you said is very much true. Is these estimates about what is needed to mitigate the issue in terms of financing sustainable development and achieving the SDGs in 2030 is any number between $4 and $7 trillion each year. And if you look at what people like us, EIB, international financial institutions, and overseas development programs run by governments can put on the table, is no more than 1 trillion per year. So clearly, the financial sector and the private sector in general has to chip in somehow, and that's where impact investing should play a role. And there is an estimate I read a few days ago that there are about $27 trillion sitting in cash, in low-yielding bonds, or actually negative-yielding bonds. That is dead money, really, that can be much more productively put at use to tackle the issue. Now, there are a number of actors, private actors that we know, asset managers that are active and getting increasingly active in the sector, family offices, endowments, insurance companies, and so on. So for people like BlackRock, Aviva, UBS are looking at the problem. I think the question here is to ensure that there is, we go beyond the lack of standards and lack of transparency, and we make sure that the momentum is not lost, and this sort of financing and this asset class of impact investment becomes a mainstream investment flow.
Thank you, Matteo. So what I heard from you is that you are not taking responsibility for the banks, saying that the banks are guilty. No, the banks have solutions, and we'll talk about solutions definitely later. We're not there yet for the solutions.
I think we need to take responsibility. I think we need to take responsibility for what has brought us here, but we need to take responsibility for solving the problem, and that is probably a more constructive way of approaching the issue.
Thank you so much. Let me come back to Jean-Jacques, putting the question another way. Is the economic models are guilty, or our values as a humanities are not right? Let's put it this way.
Well, I would say, well, first, thank you for inviting us today. It's been such a relief to be, it is such a relief to be in the real world after more than a year of being stuck at home, talking to screens and being, cut from the reality. So this is a real pleasure. But that being said, I think if we are responsible for something, we're responsible for not being creative enough, not being smart enough. And that has been going on for years. And today with this pandemic, we have to think differently. In fact, we have to think smart money versus dumb money, if I could say. The thing is that we have been always working with financial models, with an approach to investment, an approach to support for the sustainability that is very traditional. So we are guilty of being too traditional. And the next step and the wake-up call of this pandemic is to try to think differently, to bring new models, to be able to leverage and being accountable. This is very interesting because recently I had a discussion with my daughter. She's only 16, but this is this new generation, the Gen X, as we say. They are extremely cynical, so I can tell you this. She is my most critical person that I know, so she's ready to beat me every time on every discussion. But what she wants to see is accountability. She wants to have purpose. This is the new generation, and we, as adults, as the ones who are creating the world of tomorrow, for our kids, we have to be creative.
Thank you. I guess your daughter is watching this panel, and thank you for taking part of the responsibility. I think she's making applause now. I know that as a rule, the women are more responsible, less risk, I would say, more risk adverse, and they tend to take less risky decision. And for that reason, let me ask questions for two ladies, starting from Olena and then to Vera. What scares you the most in current situation? What are the most threats which on personal level makes you feel discomfortable?
Thank you, Kirill, and I hope you can hear me fine. So the sound check. I think it's a very important discussion, and if to answer your question directly about what could be the biggest risk, it's actually the lack of inclusivity in all these processes. That's why I would just really mildly object of having these questions for female or male, just because I think we are still discussing this from finance perspective as managers and professionals. And I personally am very lucky to have already 6 years of experience of impact investing, and I feel privileged in this regard because I understand that when I started and joined it in 2016, it was still a very much subject to develop. So I'm extremely happy and thankful that we can have this discussion now, just to have also the practical solutions, maybe how we can apply them for Ukraine, for Central and Eastern Europe region, but also globally.
Thank you. Vera, you don't look like a scared person.
No.
But the things we're discussing are quite important. I mean, it's a question of our children and grandchildren. It's a question of the next generation. Is there anything which really scare you, bother you, strikes your attention?
Yes, I would say the main thing which is really puts me on alert is that we all understand that climate change trend is here and it's not changing. You absolutely put it correctly that the climate, the temperatures are rising, and we, humanity, our economic models, which are based on the constant GDP growth, and this GDP growth is because of the resources used, and we don't have planet B, and we all understand this. It's not only our kids, because my kids are the same generation, they are 21 and 23, and they also come and say me, Mom, your behavior is unsustainable. That's because our education never put it on us, that we should recycle our waste, and we produce on average 2 kilograms of waste in developed countries. What happens to this waste? I also read some statistics in Ukraine, and the waste is rather thrown on a land without recycling. So that's one thing that we need to address already today with the small steps of transition. Then the next one is the energy use, fossil fuels. When we studied, for example, 35 years ago in school geography, it was said that fossil fuels are enough for 50 years. 35 years passed, so what happens next? And it's clear that we need to start this transition. And as the banks, we're important stakeholder in the whole society to create this impact, because before, when we gave money to our customers, we only asked the financials, right? We never cared what exactly the customer is doing. So if a customer is going and building up a nice greenhouse with a low energy consumption, it's exactly for us the same risk as if a customer goes and drills Arctic ice, right? So the purpose of lending was not of our focus, but this has to change, and it has to change today because we don't have planet B. And this is what scares me, what happens if after all these discussions, we do nothing.
Thank you so much. I would shortly share what scares me a lot. I was presented by my friend this book. It calls Limits to Growth. Well known, right? They published it in 50 years ago for 30 million books, 50 years ago. What they said in that book is that, well, I'm happy it's more popular than Harry Potter and Agatha Christie. That's at least some, give us some hope. And they said that the growth of economy will be limited or will stabilize in 50 years, which is 2020. We are now in 2021, and the growth has not stopped. In 1980, we've been breaking the limit of kind of equilibrium between the planet and humanity. So now we are living using resources in such a way that we have 1.5 planet. I guess in 10, 15 years, we'll be using resources in a such scale as we have 2 planets. And the developing economy is just living this economy at a greater speed. And developing countries would like to catch up. So the question, how do we deal with carbon footprint and resources usage? How do we survive on this planet? And the issues raised 50 years ago never been addressed till the full scale. So that's come to the next question. We said that we'll need money to change the whole system. But traditional economic cycle, the traditional economy is not providing the answers. So we'll have to change it, replace it, reinvent it. I mean, we'll have to do something. So in another 50 years from now, we'll have some results. And that's a major question for this panel. And before coming to that, let's take a look on your video. If we can put it on.
Maybe I get the slides first, and I run through 2 slides, and then
you said you had 100 slides, right?
I have 2 slides. I have 2 slides. I have to show them some slides. I'm sorry. When you're in academics and a professor, you always run into a lecturing mode. You got to stand this for the next 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, just 5 minutes.
Fine, but that's gonna be check questions at the end. So listen carefully. It's gonna be exam.
Okay, look at this graph. This is the CO2 level in the atmosphere over the last 200 years. Look only at the last 50 years. And the last 50 years show you that there's no change. Since the Club of Rome report from 1972, what you see is there's no change. You cannot even significantly measure the impact of Paris. The same is true for the Living Planet. This is the index which measures the loss of biodiversity. No real change. You know, the World Academy met in 2015 after the UN SDGs got signed in, and we tried to come up with the question, we all want the UN SDGs as a roadmap, basically all of us, but we missed out to answer the question, how are we going to finance all this, right? Roughly. And finance is different. Financing in the Anthropocene is going to be different. How can we hedge planetary risks and fund all these unmet challenges ahead? And how can we come up with a feasible approach beyond getting lost in regulatory incrementals on one side and metaphysic debates about what the money is and what the world should look like? I would like to show you a video, 5 minutes, and then we go into discussion, okay?
Imagine our world in 15 years. We reach the Sustainable Development Goals. We have stopped climate change, saved our planet, and overcome major social challenges at the same time. It's possible. We already have the scientific evidence, the technology, and the political consensus. The only thing we need is the money to make it happen. $4 to $5 trillion annually over the next 15 years, earmarked, raised fast. Let's look at our current financial system. Central banks create money precisely where the entire global value chain starts. This value chain has to jump multiple hurdles like ongoing pandemics, species extinction, the increasing carbon bubble, and other catastrophes, which are costs that keep the entire value chain functioning. In addition, the shadow economy, which is fraught with scams, corruption, illicit transactions, and money laundering, is feeding that value chain and pulling it in the wrong direction. At the bottom of that value chain, we tax our economic activities and transfer that tax money towards the SDGs. This so-called end-of-pipe financing is too slow and too little in volume to finance our future. And it can't invest in risky green projects or serve the general interest and our common good. Besides, we don't want to privatize our entire world. Commons require a different monetary approach. We have to learn to think differently. Traditionally, finance drives sustainability. It should be the other way around. Sustainability drives finance. We identify the challenges and create the most innovative financial assets and bodies to solve these challenges. So, what is the solution? We create a parallel financial system based on a blockchain-built cryptocurrency. This way, we would have enough money to invest in projects that support the SDGs. The beauty of such a parallel system stems from the fact that it is able to shift our entire society towards a greener, more sustainable future. How does it work? The currency can be issued by central banks or regulated private agents. The use of the money will be determined by the SDGs. These will be shaped into concrete guidelines and stored in the currency itself as a smart contract, the blockchain, a distributive ledger technology. The smart contract doesn't allow the money to be used in any other way than that defined in the smart contract. Also, transactions will be stored in the blockchain. No manipulation is possible. Therefore, no greenwashing, corruption, shadow economy, fraud, or theft. We create millions of green and fair jobs at the same time. The best thing, this is much faster than other solutions. We can put it up in less than 18 months with a staff of fewer than 200. In the past, our financial system had been stumbling from crisis to crisis. We should have a financial system that serves the common good, not itself. For that reason, we need a two-pronged currency system. With the additional green cryptocurrency, our financial system would rely on two pillars instead of just a single, unstable one. If done in the right way, it operates in an anti-cyclical and anti-inflationary fashion and makes the system more resilient. It generates circular and more regional economies. With this financial mechanism in place, we create unlimited opportunities. It will allow us to non-disruptively hedge, fund and transit our society towards a more sustainable future, for fairer profits, healthier people, and for the entire planet. Ask your government officials, how do you want to finance the SDGs in the next 15 years? If the answer is unsatisfactory, then tell them there is an alternative available. Think outside the box. Unleash the sleeping giant of a parallel SDG cryptocurrency. Questions?
That's a solution, right? That's a solution as you see. Can you just briefly say, for those who are not familiar with cryptocurrency, you're proposing to create a parallel system to the existing financial system?
Some add-ons. You know, this is not a freaky thing of some fellows of the World Academy thinking about some stuff. This is happening already. This is happening already in front of your eyes. 2.2 trillion asset capitalization in the cryptocurrency market is already happening. 55 central banks are operating with so-called central bank digital currencies, exactly with that technology. And if you add that technology with blockchain-associated algorithms, you can create the required smart liquidity you were talking about, targeted to the SDGs or targeted to the investments we want to have, generating exactly the forms of revenues, exactly the forms of future we want to have. This, or a very similar mechanism to this, and if I had 2 hours, I could be more precise about it, is going to be the social mechanism required in order to finance our future. Thank
you so much. Lena, let me come back to you. I know that you are an expert and your fund is expert in investment, in smart investment, in sustainable investment. What do you see? What would be the solution? Would you share the ideas of Stefan, or maybe you have your specific recipe to save the planet?
Yeah, thank you, Kirill. Just maybe share with the audience. So Luminate is a fund which is set up by Piero Media, the founder of eBay. And Piero Media is actually one of the people who was targeting and pushing activism worldwide for more than 15 years now. So I'm glad that we have this experience also for Ukraine. It's Western Europe. And regarding this video, I find it really fascinating. And again, I can only stress how important it is for us to have this discussion about different ways of financing. I still think that we have enough resources even without additional ways of cryptocurrencies, because there is massive resources worldwide available for different projects. And I do hope that it's possible to target them as well for this kind of for funds, for anything. And I also would love to stress that for any impact investing initiatives or anything that deals with sustainable development, it's extremely important to have co-funders and what I call diversity of capital. And I think this is also what we discuss now. We have representatives of different types of capitals, private, state, banking, and it's important to understand that we should be aligned. I think that specifically, maybe my question also to Stefan in this regard will be, if this new currency, will it be set only by governments, or will it be also the way for private capital to take participations? And I saw the role of civil society to play in this regard. So this type of initiatives, in my view, would be really the most effective and profits. It will be really shared participation for all, and of course shared responsibility for all as well.
Thank you, Elena. We'll save that question. We'll save that question to answer later. Coming back to the bankers, to Matteo. I know that your bank is deeply involved in that, and you're not just giving money. You're not giving money for coil or things which are kind of old technology, and you're not giving money if the borrower doesn't meet specific requirements. Can you elaborate on that? What is the strategy of EBRD?
With pleasure. Maybe if you allow me just 1 minute before I delve further in what the EBRD does and what is the approach of the EBRD. I actually found the video really fascinating and really interesting. As I said before, I think that indeed there are enough resources in the private sector already, but I also buy completely into the idea that we need to think laterally and out of the box. So I don't know whether cryptocurrency and blockchain managed by authorities will be the answer or will be part of the answer, but clearly is not something that we should be neglecting. Now, going to the EBRD, we could be part of the solution. Actually, the EBRD, by definition, is a sustainable development financing institution. This is part of our mission. And if you look at the strategy of the EBRD in the next 5 years, the 3 pillars that on which our strategy hinges are green transition, so climate change mitigation, digitalization, and equality of opportunities. And all what we do year in, year out, and we invest about 10 billion euros in our countries of operation, is about that. All our projects as of next year need to be Paris aligned. 50% of our projects need to have a component of climate mitigation, which means either generation in renewable energy or energy efficiency or resource efficiency and so on and so forth. But that obviously is not enough. As I was saying before, even the collective group of IFIs, and among them there are some, including EIB, that are much bigger than us, could put no more than 1 trillion euro per year at work, and that is not sufficient, clearly. So I would agree with the speaker who preceded me that we need to have a concerted action of governments, multilateral institutions, civil society, and in particular private institutions, private investors in this effort. If I can, if I can spend another 30 seconds on how we could work together, my sense is that government, rather than chipping in money, should make sure that there are the right regulatory conditions for the private investors to be willing and to invest in sustainable development. If you take, for instance, renewable energy, in a number of countries, including, unfortunately, Ukraine, we have seen a reversal and retroactive change of remuneration of investments in the renewable energy sector. In Ukraine only, there have been, over the years, about $1 billion of investments in renewable energy. And these $1 billion have been put in jeopardy by the unilateral change of feed-in tariff and remuneration scheme. Now, things are probably going to be solved in the next few months with the issuance of green bonds and the definition of a sustainable and cost-reflective tariff. But this is where I would like to see governments to pay attention to, rather than intervening directly in the financing of sustainable development. And then, again, there is the private sector. There are corporates that need to change their culture, and indeed, corporate governance that should focus more on stakeholders management rather than on shareholders management is a big part of that. And people like the daughter of Jean-Jacques and others that hold us accountable and drive the shift of culture of consumption is a crucial element in this effort.
Thank you, Matteo. Jean-Jacques, you've been mentioned a couple of times by Matteo, and also we know that EIB is the largest financial institution in the world, right? You are bigger than World Bank, so naturally you would take more responsibility. What?
I'm responsible only to my daughter.
Not personally, not personally, because today you speak for the institution, but what are the plans at EIB?
Well, I don't want to repeat what Matteo has been saying very clearly and much smartly than me, but I would like to because our institutions are completely aligned. The EIB last year has been lending 70 billion, and it's true that the proportion of climate change action is huge. And next year we will be aiming at 50%, same as EBRD. So we are very coordinated in this approach. But I would like to get rather to your point. I fully subscribe the idea of having blockchain and cryptocurrency to finance the new investments. However, my concern is not on the ways to finance this, but rather on finding the smart investments. This is, again, I would like to come back to the point of accountability, measurable impact. This is the way of the future. You know, when the European Union starts to talk about connectivity instead of infrastructure, this means a lot. It's a very deep change of culture. You don't think about infrastructure in a way of usage. You think about infrastructure in a way of user experience, if I make this analogy. You don't want to invest into, like in Ukraine, you don't want to invest into redoing the pavement of a road where at the same time the trucks are weighted and within 2 years it will be destroyed. So you want to invest into weight station, and then your infrastructure will last longer. And then you can measure the impact. And then you can be accountable to your investors, and investors can be either institutions, either the government, or the individuals. Matteo was mentioning trillions and trillions of money sitting there, liquidity available, but how to mobilize it is by being accountable and having smart investments, in my opinion.
Yeah, super. I mean, these are these topics that gets me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. It's so super exciting. 2 comments. First, look at the private cash purse, right? From the data perspective, 85% globally, 85% of all assets under management, liquid and illiquid, are privatized already, 85%. Do we really want to mobilize even more of that in order to privatize our global commons? We should not. I'm not arguing about restructuring the private sector to become greener. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense. UN SDGs, about 2/3 of UN SDGs are global commons. We agreed on in 2015. So we agreed on. We're not starting the debate again whether we want the UN SDGs or not. We agreed on. So, but 2/3 of them are global commons. Means like fresh air, or access to the healthcare system, or access to a kindergarten, or overcoming poverty. I do not want to privatize fresh air, really not. However, the private sector has a lot to do in their own business and partly coming up with PPPs and blended finance, et cetera, between the commons and the private sector. Second, to your comment on taxonomy and how to measure all that stuff. Of course, we've been having this debate about taxonomy since about 35 years, coming up with the right frame, where to invest, and what is green and what is not green. I've been involved in that debate since 35 years. And I tell you what's going to happen, and which had happened and will happen. The corporate people, the Vatican, the politicians and the NGOs sitting around the table and discussing what is green. And the Vatican is going to tell you, definitely no porn. And the French people are going to tell you everything but surely nuclear power. And the Polish people are going to tell you fossil for sure, but with the filter. And the NGO sector will tell you none of them. And you're going to debate another 30 years on what's green and what is not green. It's a nice academic debate, right? It's an important academic debate, but we don't get it down to the road. We need a different approach for that.
Thank you. Vera, coming to you, you've been listening carefully and wisely for bankers discussing what we need to save the planet. What is your recipe?
I would say in terms of liquidity, currently we have plenty of liquidity, especially in European Union after COVID situation. There were a lot of quantitative easing. In June, Raiffeisen Bank International, we issued a green bond in Austria, attracting 500 million to finance green real estate, clean transportation, and renewable energy projects, which we have. And I must say that the order book, because I was talking to investors, was 5 or 6 times more than we wanted. So to me, this is an indicator that liquidity is not an issue. What I see as an issue, first of all, the mindset, which we all have to change in the financial sector and really look at the purpose of what we are giving money for. And second, to be really careful to label what's green and what is not green, because greenwashing is now creeping in our transactions, and there will be more and more customers, although EU taxonomy may be a question, but this is going to be our standard, and starting from 2023, the large multinational corporates in European Union will need to report their turnover and their activities aligned with the EU taxonomy. And this is also applies, for example, for large Ukrainian producers like cement or aluminium or steel suppliers to European Union, that they will also need to disclose if they meet minimum social safeguards, do not significant harm objectives, and compliance with the EU taxonomy. So for us, it's a first step to go for, but what we really need is to remove all this kind of shadows of green and really decide on what is green, what is not, to enable the transition towards green. And of course, not to look only at green, but also at social, because we need to have a holistic view on the whole sustainability and financing of SMEs, financing of healthcare. We saw how much is needed, financing of education, not forgetting the inclusive finance, which is currently is a huge gap. What IFC has estimated of $300 trillion of financing, for example, women in business. These are figures of 21st century, right? So we need to have a really holistic approach towards sustainable finance. We have to change the mindset. We have to move from just talking, walk the talk, and really implement it in the financial sector. And what I also want to highlight, for example, in RBI, we have committed in February this year to principles of responsible banking, and I really encourage all other banks to join this journey and commit to sustainable development goals, what was mentioned by my colleagues before. And also, if we decide that we stop financing thermal coal because it's clear that it's really polluting and it contributes heavily to greenhouse gas emissions, but it's not that happens that one bank is committed to stop financing, and then what happens to the customers? They go to another bank, and then they get financing. And this carbon leakage, that's the new term, I expect may happen when some customers from Western European countries will move to Eastern European countries to get the financing. And therefore, I really ask everyone, let's join our efforts to tackle the climate change issues and societal issues.
Thank you, Vera. You know, let me get further and dig on that holistic approach. Does anyone know what is prisoner's dilemma? That's, yeah, you know, you can read about that. It's like if we gather together and we agreed on a rule, and we decided to play the rule, and someone is cheating, then everyone will lose. So we have all the friends and respectable bankers on this panel, and everyone said that, yeah, we will follow the rule, we will save the planet. But then it comes to the economy, and one bank would say, you know, I'm interested in getting shareholder equity up and making some money. Disregard what others are doing. So someone will cheat, definitely. So my question is, and you are free to choose who would answer first, how do you balance the interest of government, corporates, including banks, and people? Because we are all in three roles, right? Government, corporates, and people. How do we unite, and how do we tackle this prisoner's dilemma that someone is not following the rule and, you know, trying to get his economy more successful, more productive? Like, I wouldn't point the names, but someone says that we will not limit the carbon footprint by 2050 or 2040. What other countries will have to respond to? Please, how do we tackle the trust? Let's put it this way. Anyone? Because you're a professor.
I don't want to monopolize the entire debate here. I mean, financing of the past is not financing of the future. Okay, we agree on that.
But the rules are the same.
That's the problem.
Right? Everyone has paid.
In our mind, we think we have to come up with the smallest denominator between what the state is doing and what the market is doing. And I think this view, this narrative is wrong. There's a third player, and it's basically the central bankers and the regulators. If we had an expanded monetary mandate for central bankers, proactively, preventively providing liquidity through distributive ledger technology, enabling the state to do its business and enabling the market to do its business officially, we would be able to overcome this specific prisoner dilemma, and we would overcome the constraints of a smallest common denominator between the market and the state. If you want to know more about it, we need more formats to discuss this important topic. You know, if I only have 30 seconds on how to change the world, I need a little bit more time for that.
Unfortunately, it's always the case. You know, we have a couple of years to make changes. You know, to make changes. But anyone else? Because as I heard from you, there must be responsibility of central bank. They will do the jobs, they will take the lead, and the rest will just relax and will do whatever they're doing, throwing plastic or cans, as has been taught.
If I may, I have this vision that, in fact, accountability is becoming more and more real. Before, for many years, it was just a concept or a nice to have, and there was no real accountability. And again, going back to the idea of blockchain, ensuring that the accountability is measurable and it's true. That's the most important. And I see an evolution of the financing world where, in fact, you incentivize the good money, if I put it this way. This can only happen if you can trust the impact of what you're doing. And if you incentivize, let's say, for example, I want to lend to a company. If the company is providing a real impact that I can measure, I can give better money for them. And the investors will find a way to choose this business rather than another one, which previously was more profitable. So it's a whole thinking, it's a different way of thinking, but I really believe that, again, accountability, the real accountability will provide the necessary tools for people to invest. And again, our children will do that. When they will be hopefully wealthy enough to invest their money, then they will choose the companies that they like, you know, and they like the companies that will preserve their environment rather than the ones who will be polluting.
May I just add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think non-financial disclosure regulation is a good framework here to have, first of all, standardized, be transparent on the impact, and be transparent in the way that it's clearly understood by investors and by other market participants. If it's some positive investment should be measured in a standardized units like CO2 emissions saved with this green investment, or if it's a social investment, then a number of people who are benefiting from these investments. Currently, we're really missing, when I look at the corporates and engage with them, to reduce their carbon heavy impact of their activities, sometimes even their sustainability reports are not really clear. It seems that they do a good thing, but it's not clearly communicated. And this non-financial disclosure, that's something that I'm missing today.
Thank you, Vera. Coming to Elena and Matteo, would you agree to the approach which Stefan proposed that we all should, do whatever we can, but central banks should take the responsibility, and we will just lead or follow central banks? Anyway, let me put this question because I have some rights here.
I like the provocative question. No, of course we don't agree, and I don't think Stefan meant really that. And I think we all agree that we really need an holistic approach to the issue. And we all, as much as we are all responsible, including the financial sector, for where we are, because we've been part of the system, we are all responsible to correct the direction of travel. And as it happens pretty often, I happen to be, again, in agreement with Jean-Jacques on the fact that there is a cultural shift, and that goes hand in hand with accountability. And I see that in a number of fronts. It's a process, of course, but I see the civil society taking more and more responsibility in terms of pattern of consumption, for instance. I see the corporate world taking more responsibility in terms of governance and stakeholders management, as I mentioned before. And I agree that the non-financial reporting it has to be part of that, but I think it is becoming part of that in a long-term process. And the financial industry is doing the same. There is a reason why green bonds are less expensive than normal bonds. So clearly also investors are paying more attention to these aspects. The question is, whether we are transparent enough, and the issue of greenwashing is a major issue. But the major question to me is, do we have enough time to run this learning curve in a few years? And that is probably, there is a need to accelerate the process.
Thank you, Matteo. Elena, coming back to you. You are chess championship. You know how to make things, how to make strategies and make them work and leverage on that. Do you see the win-win strategy for the corporate sector, government, central banks, that we can, play this chess game and win at the end?
Thank you so much, Kirill. I really enjoy how you structure your questions, and in this regard, I should say, if to compare this to chess, that we definitely see that in the game of chess, resources are limited, and actually we also have the limited resources in terms of national resources. Although our finance resources, this is something that we can develop and scale, because this is something that humans develop in this regard. I should say that as practitioner, actually, when I was listening to this discussion, I do feel already on the daily basis everything that we discuss, how to jungle the different groups, including government, because we do operate private capital, but we still need to work with governments. We still need to have the projects to invest. And I would really to bring up also the risk of having enough projects of good quality to support on this. Because what we see, for example, in Central and Eastern Europe, that there is still lack of good projects to invest, and sometimes we can have money, but not really the teams to support in this regard. And in terms of how to manage this, I think this is what officially could be called art of management, or unofficially is ancient art of carrots and sticks. It's just like when you speak about the level of governments, it's definitely more carrots and sticks that governments have. And I do feel that actually there are quite enough of good initiatives now on intergovernmental level about how governments can work much more efficiently, having all the mechanisms and resources for this. For example, the recent proposal about targeting carbon emissions and somehow link it to international trade tariffs and the rest. So I think we do have quite a lot of mechanisms in place. It's just like really how we define the different sets and structures of this. I also very much enjoy that we speak a lot about human nature in this regard, because it's still everything is made by human, and how much value we have in different decisions, this is actually how we also express ourselves. I think that we speak a lot about how our children will have the vote, but it's actually something we can do also now ourselves. So we don't need to wait for someone to be better. We can also try to become better.
Thank you, Olena. I have a set of like 3 questions, which are kind of controversial, but I will ask for different people. The questions are, why can we fail in a thing which we are doing? What are the reasons which the major risk of us failing to do whatever we are committed? The second question would be, why we will not fail? And those questions will be for Vera and Olena. And the question for Stefan, which we will start with, would be, how much time do we have? But not in years, in generation. Definitely, it's not our problem, right? Because we live tremendous life. The sun is bright, the grass is green, and we are traveling, pandemic is over, the water is available. So let's be fair, we're enjoying life. Is it a problem of our children, grandchildren, or grandchildren, when everything gonna be, you know, not possible to get back?
Yeah, okay. It's a matter of the next decade, this decade.
You're saying it's my problem?
It's our, yes, it is. It's going to be also your problem. The pandemics, it's going to be your problem. And the biodiversity loss is going to be your and my problem too. You know what?
I was expecting another answer.
No. Do you know what the selection advantage of humans are? It's not the opposition of the thumb. It's not walking straight up. It's not emotions. It's not thinking. It's not living together in groups. It's none of this. You know what it is? Where we can fail and achieve? It's the ability to tell each other stories about something that doesn't exist in the real world. And up to now, we're still telling us the wrong story about the monetary system. If we change our mind with regard to the monetary narrative, we're going to change the world to the good or to the bad.
Thank you. A question to the bankers, sorry for torturing you. What are the like 2 or 3 points which will make us fail in achieving whatever we agreed today? Maybe Jean-Jacques, from you. Well, why we will fail?
I fail every day.
Well,
I fail every day.
It's normal, we are together.
I fail every day by being caught into the nitty-gritty of the daily constraint. In fact, there is, and I suppose that we all face the same. We are into systems that prevent us to think creatively and to take risks. Because everybody, by human nature, we hate risk. So our responsibility, again, and the reason why we fail is that, in a way, we are comfortably sitting in our position, in our role, and not trying to move, to shake the tree, in fact. So in the banking sector, this is extremely, it's pushed to a level that is absolutely unimaginable, with all the regulation that is piling up every day. New ideas, new goodwill, as we say in French. I don't know the English the way of saying it, but the path to hell is paved with good intentions. This is exactly where we stand in the financial sector, in the banking sector. By wanting to do things too good, then we are prevented to do the things right.
Thank you. Matteo, coming back to you, Jean-Jacques said that we are comfortable enough to make changes, and that's the biggest the biggest threat. Would you agree on that? What is your outcomes? What are the biggest threats? Why we will fail?
I think it's what the statisticians call the type 2 error. We really don't know what we don't know. We tend to make mistakes on what we say, but we do not consider what is out there, and we don't really know. And that goes again on hand in hand with not being willing, not being able to think out of the box. And we are very much focused on what we know, on what we do, and we try to do it properly, but we are missing huge opportunities. And that's why I may disagree with Stefan's proposition of having the central banks creating a parallel monetary system based on blockchain, but that's something that we should consider, and maybe then we can discard it. But there is a world of opportunities there that we are not really looking at, and that, and again, is a bit close to what Jean-Jacques was saying. We need to think more creatively. We are too much bogged down on what we do and not enough energetic and intellectually motivated to think about what else we can do.
Thank you, Matteo. So as we're coming to the end of the panel, I would like to finish with some optimistic messages, which I hope will come from Olena and then Vera. And the question is the same: why we will not fail?
We will not fail because we don't want to do so. We are quite smart and understand that innovation is needed and the change is needed to drive to positive outcome. We will not fail because this ESG topic or sustainable finance, it's something what I notice among my colleagues. It's also linked to our personal values, right? In comparison to all other things which we do, like regulation, investment, so on, in financial sector, which is pure money-driven, the sustainable finance is something which also touches us in persons. And we do understand when we involved in the sustainable finance activities that we create impact with our activities, that we create a positive change, and this is what really motivates us to move forward. It's like there is a certain tipping point where more and more people join the sustainable finance community, and they really like to drive this change. And I think this is kind of common goal that we have, and understanding that climate change is not something abstract, that it stands really next to our door. Because, for example, the temperatures are rising, because there are floods like we faced this year in Austria, we faced floods. In Germany, there were heats. There were burnt forests starting in Turkey, then in Greece, in Italy, and Portugal. We saw it. It stands next to us, and we understand that we're responsible for this, and we can change. And this understanding and awareness, exactly, I think will help us to achieve what we want to do.
Thank you, Vera. Lena, give us a hint why we will not fail.
Well, I think there's two sides here. So first of all, we will not fail because I think that we are good. So people by nature are good. It just maybe it takes a process to realize it, and there is nothing better than being good. It just takes time and processes. We are going through this transformation. We are doing different choices, but still it should come to the point when the good nature of people will prevail. And on the other side also, just Kirill, you brought this example with chess. So I just keep thinking that we actually are not playing against someone. So it's not really a chess game. It's more about solving a chess puzzle. So we do have a number of resources that we just need to put into the chessboard in a specific way, and we need to find the winning move. But we are not at war with someone. We are just like trying to solve this chess puzzle. And just I know that people are very good in solving chess puzzles, so we definitely will come this road.
Yeah, machine can become better, so it's, I guess, humanity are losing to machines in some games. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a session dedicated to sustainable development financing. I warmly appreciate all our guests and speakers. Please continue communication after the panel because 1 hour is not enough. We have specific KIEF Academy initiative dedicated to the sustainable development, and we'll spend separate date on that, discovering further. So please follow us on social networks, and for those who are above 40, we have Facebook as well, so please pay attention to that. Thank you for coming.